Hey, Lionesses, this is Bobby Carlton. I'm the publisher and editor-in-chief of Lioness magazine, as well as the founder of Innovation Women. Today, I am talking with Sheryl Schultz. She is one of the two female founders of CabinetM, which is a marketing technology management platform. So welcome, Sheryl.
Hey, thanks so much for having me here today, Bobby. It's really a pleasure to spend time with someone who's done so much for the startup industry and for the women in it. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So CabinetM is my favorite topic. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So we're a software as a service platform that marketing teams use to audit, document, manage, visualize, and report on their marketing technology stacks. Now that's a mouthful. So here's some quick background. Marketing today, as you know, is completely dependent on technology. Think about how brands get your attention these days, for example. And large companies are using more than 75 and upwards of 250 different tools in order to acquire, engage, and retain customers and create that 360-degree experience. Now, they did not purchase those tools overnight. And over time, this list has gone on and grown. But if you ask most companies to automatically provide you with a list of tools in their arsenal, how they're connected, how data flows between them, they just can't do it. So with more than 25% of the marketing budget going towards technology, those teams need a very simple way to keep track of all the detail and report on demand. So we make that possible. Our customers report huge time savings, and they also reduce their spend, eliminate spend by 20% and up. And that's money that can be reallocated.
I'm actually surprised it's as little as 25% of it is spent on technology.
Yeah. It's interesting because if you look at the Gartner numbers, there's somewhere between 26 and 29% over the past few years. So over a quarter. And it is quite remarkable because for years, people just spent money and there was no oversight whatsoever. And over the past couple of years, first with COVID and now with sort of the Great Resignation, and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that later. It's actually, those things have hurt us and helped us. You need to know. You need to know what's going on, and people are starting to ask questions. So, there's more and more intention on the role that we support, which is marketing operations. And marketing operations is getting a larger and larger voice inside of organizations, particularly where you have enlightened CMOs. Okay. So
I love that term, enlightened CMOs.
Yeah.
And Chief Marketing Officer for those following along at home. All right. I'm going to switch tacks. I'm going to talk here. You've been involved in startups and growing and scaling and funding companies practically your entire career. I mean, you were even involved in the early days of Golden Seeds, which is one of the first angel groups specifically targeting women-founded companies. Can we talk a little bit about those early days for you? You're setting out on your career path. Where did it start and where is it taking you?
So one of the stories I like to tell is when I went on my interview for my first job, I opened the door and I was in one room. And up until then, I didn't know that companies actually could come in one room sizes, but there I was. Okay. And so that was a startup agency. I was super fortunate. I had an amazing mentor there. Her name is Lois Whitman. She runs really a publicity shop, as opposed to a PR agency called HWH. And, she taught me about PR. She taught me about writing. And what's more important is she taught me about connecting. She is the ultimate networker. Okay. So, I had this really cool startup PR experience then. And then I left and I moved to Memphis, Tennessee, which is a story for another day. But I took a job running all marketing programs for a startup in the telecommunications industry. And for, people listening who are old enough to remember, once upon a time ago, there was only one phone company and it was AT&T. And the government blew it up and said it was a monopoly, and they broke it up into, 7 different baby bells. And so I started working in that industry exactly at that point in time. So I got to grow with the industry, learn a lot, and I spent a tremendous part of my career launching telecommunications startups, one after another. Literally, people would get their money, they'd come to me and they'd say, can you support me? Can you launch me? And so, I'd help them do their messaging, I'd help them hire resources, and then I'd launch their company. And it was a heady time in telecom, and companies were getting acquired left and right, which was a great thing for me in my career. So, during that period of time, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the people who were running these businesses. I learned a lot about budgets, budgeting, and I learned a lot about what it meant to be risk averse and totally not risk averse. Okay. And so I am pretty much totally not risk averse, which is what you need to be to launch lots and lots of startups and then take on your own. So during that period of time, and I know that you want to talk about partners and partnerships.
Oh, yes.
But during that period of time, I actually met my business partner, because people would bring us onto their advisory boards. And, someone always asked me, well, why would they bring 2 marketers onto an advisory board? It was like, oh, yeah, we're nothing alike.
All right. So for people who don't know, Sheryl, Sheryl has not trod this path alone. And Anita, who's the co-founder for CabinetM, you guys worked together several times. I mean,
yes.
I would love to get your advice for others around co-founders, if they have co-founders, if they're seeking co-founders, or as I like to call them, be partner in crime. Is there a division of labor? How do you approach decision making when there's 2 of you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And, everyone should be lucky enough to find a business partner that complements them the way Anita and I complement one another. Okay, so that's the first point I'll make here. Do not look for someone who's just like you. A lot of founders are like, oh, I want to be really comfortable. This is hard. It's really, it's a winding path. Yeah, that's true. Except that you want to find somebody that can look through, that kaleidoscope, right? And see things totally different than you, because it makes the company stronger. So back to Anita and I, for those people who remember the Patty Duke show, we often call ourselves the Patty Duke cousins, okay? She's the yin to my yang, but to be more specific, Anita is very analytical and pragmatic. And I'm more intuitive and sort of creative. I look at everything from, as high up as you can look. And she is right there in the details, sort of sorting them through. And, that served us really well, because we come at it from different things. We're both career marketers, by the way. And so given the ability to look at things in multidimensional ways, you really get to something that's more powerful and a lot stronger. And I'll tell you this really short story. So Anita and I, we were introduced on advisory boards, and then someone actually put us on their board, and we used to travel together. He was in North Carolina, and he'd have his board meetings in all these unusual places. So she and I would spend like 10 hours traveling, and you get to know someone really well over that time. So, we started doing some consulting work for companies. We had an LLC, and then Anita's husband was involved in an angel group, and Golden Seeds was starting here. And she went to the first meeting, called me and said, oh yeah, you have got to come with me. This is your candy. Okay. And so, I went and I was hooked, and, we'll spend a little bit of time, talking about that. But within a short period of time, we were running Golden Seeds here because, we run things. We don't serve very well as members. And it was a great way for us to see whether we could work together. And the truth is that intuitively, we know what lane we should start swimming in. And so if somebody sends us a message, and the same holds true today, we just know who's supposed to answer it. It's sort of a crazy thing, I guess. But, at CabinetM, Anita's the CEO. Okay. And Anita, also run, we're a tiny organization, and we're highly leveraged. And if we did not have the relationship we did, I'm not sure we could run the scaling business with as small a team as we run it with. So Anita runs engineering. She does all the project management. She really runs she runs marketing. She's a marketing thinker, I tend to run operations, which is, all of our outside vendors, and all the money, right? The money coming in, the money going out, all the tracking of the money and the legalese. I actually do all the sales. I do the pre-sales, the sales, and then I do the customer success, which is sort of interesting. And then I do a sliver of marketing around content. And so, there's this gray area that we travel in terms of, my speaking to customers and saying to Anita, we really need to do this, we really need to do that. Or Anita saying to me, I heard on our call today, because occasionally we do calls together with customers, I heard, that this client wants X, keep an ear out, right? And so, we're able to do that back and forth. So we don't always agree. Okay. In fact, we have been in meetings where we tell people, don't get nervous. We don't agree, and we'll argue something, to the ground, but it's just not personal, right? It's really about making the business a better place. And so, we do argue it. The thing I will say is that, unless I am just so crazy, passionate, sure of something, if we are fighting and we don't agree, she is the CEO and I'll let her make that decision. Okay. But often we will come back and we will revisit things that we didn't agree on. And, nobody has any ego in it. It's really for the business. So it could swing one way or it could swing the other. So we find that for features, we've run into that over pricing. We've run into it over hiring people and when to hire people. And, we just sort it out and figure it out. And again, there have been, I want to say, very few times for either of us where, we feel like, oh my God, I just possibly cannot do this one more minute with this person, But, finding someone that compliments you that way is really, really important, and one of the things that we didn't talk about, but it's really relevant here and to my Golden Seas experience is, so when I went into the telecommunications startup that I worked for out of New York, they were actually, I was running all the marketing programs and they were trying to raise money. And so the president would go out, there was nobody there who could work on marketing stuff. So it was me. And so the president would go out on the road from Monday to Thursday, trying to raise money. And on Friday, he'd come back and we'd sit and we'd redo his deck for raising money. So, I was in my mid-20s and I was doing decks for raising money and I knew nothing about it, except ultimately that company was acquired, right? And so that was the start. But, that served me really, really well because, raising money's hard, right? It's, it's one of the things that people say and women say even louder. And I'm going to rubber stamp that in a big way here. Okay. Super hard for women to raise money. So you have to be smart about, sort of going out, who you talk to. And we've been able to raise, enough capital to get us to this place. And now we run the business for the most part on revenue. And that's a good thing. If you can't get it from one place, you have to get it from the other. But the thing that's important to note is in order to do that, you really have to think about how you spend money. And that is, I think, more of an art than a science. And it's one of my superpowers is, being able to look at a small amount of money and understand how to hold the rein on it and get creative about it. And you know what? Anita, sort of lives right alongside me on that. But that's, it's hard, and I've sat on the boards of companies. I've been a board advisor, and it's one of the things that I end up bringing to the table to people who've never had to really skinny down a business or understand what it means to do the work truly yourself, and just get creative about, how it gets done or where you put your money. We bought HubSpot during COVID. And that was, even though there was a giant discount.
Not the company.
No, not the company. We bought a HubSpot instance, right? Thank you. And, we are really now putting it to work for us hard, between, marketing automation and tying it to all the sales flows. And, it makes a difference for a company that is lean and mean. So, you make choices along the way.
Absolutely.
So,
and, coming from a company that is looking at all of these different platforms, that's quite a testimonial for HubSpot.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but does it let me do everything I need to do? Yes. Can I figure out eventually how to do anything I want to do? Yes. And Anita really implemented it. And she did, a magnificent job of it. So, we often talk about what happens when they super jack up the rate, because everything is in there. But you know what? Hopefully nobody from HubSpot is listening to this.
You realize this is going on my website, right?
Yeah. That's okay. But, you mentioned talking about, sort of golden seeds and, women funded startups. So, I spent my career in a male dominated world, right? I walked into a room. I was the only woman there. My short story, which is a bad story, right, is that, when I was working at the little startup in Tennessee, I planned this amazing sales incentive program trip to Jamaica. And, I did all the arrangements and the planning because sales incentive programs lived alongside of everything else I did in marketing. And, at the end of the planning, my male boss picked up the folder and he went off on the trip with all the guys. So, there's been a lot of that. But, when I went to Golden Seeds for the first time, it was really interesting because I looked around the room and it was the first time that I had been in a room with predominantly all women. It's a little disconcerting, right? Look around, it's like, oh yeah, this is not like what I've done before. But the stories that you hear from women, trying to raise money with amazing, incredible backgrounds and really extraordinary ideas about how to change one industry or another is, it's just unprecedented. And so, I really consider it a privilege to have been able to, invest in unbelievable businesses, some of which exited, some of which went out of business, and, some of which are still alive. And, I think that they'll do great, but they take time. They don't take any longer than those male founded businesses. And so, Golden Seeds now is over 300 investors across the country. There are, it's not just women, it's women and it's men who want to support women. And they also have had 3 different funds. They had an original sidecar fund, excuse me, and they had, and that actually invested based on what the investors wanted to invest in, the individual investors. And, for your viewers who aren't familiar with angel investing, if you join a firm, they come in a number of different flavors. One of the flavors is that as a group, you evaluate deals, you look at them, you see, you do due diligence, to understand the market, the founders, why they're doing this, what, the financials can look like. And then the individual members write checks. That is Golden Seeds. That's a network. And so Golden Seeds then had Fund 1, which invested alongside of the investors. It had Fund 2, which was an independent fund. And then they started the Golden Seeds Venture Fund, I want to say maybe, 2 years ago, like during COVID. And, some of their deals from early on are starting to exit in a big way. I had raised the money. I had sat on the board of a company called Crimson Hexagon, which was my introduction to the marketing technology space. I ended up seeing every deal in marketing technology because I did that. And that company merged with Brandwatch in, I want to say 2018, maybe. And it was sold to Cision for $450 million last year. So, it was quite a magnificent, exit. But, if you think about it, 2008, the first money went in. 2021, the money came out. So, angel money has to be patient, pretty much. But, given the opportunity to work with really bright people to evaluate these deals, but also to, sit shoulder to shoulder with entrepreneurs who had a passion for what they were doing and why, and to be able to share, really what we knew with them, was really great. And so, my angel investment career pretty much, I won't say it ended, but it definitely subsided greatly when we started, CabinetM. And, one of the things that we tell people all the time is we are invested right alongside of our investors inside of CabinetM, and we believe in it. We're passionate about it. And so we put our money where our mouth is.
Fantastic. All right. What's next for you and CabinetM?
Yeah. So, so COVID and then the Great Resignation have, pretty much inserted some dynamics that were interesting for us. So for the first probably 7 to 9 months of COVID, it was scary, right? We're a small payroll. We were able to get a PPP loan, but not a huge one. Our investors, really sort of topped us off a little bit so we could sort of get through that knothole. And then so we had an amazing pipeline going into it. And then we built the pipeline again. And what happened was truly remarkable, which is, our clients started leaving, but they didn't leave in people. They sort of left in teams. Teams were blowing up all over. And so, that was interesting. But what it did was something in the business that we're seeing over the past 3 months in a big way. So 2 years ago, I started selling into the channel, right? There are a lot of digital agencies. They range from, organizations that are small and focused on a particular technology to organizations like KPMG, who, by the way, happens to be a partner. And it took a long time. But one of the things that we learned in signing partners is that it's not just about signing them, right? Everybody's like, oh yeah, I'll do this. Maybe I can sell this. But activating them, truly activating them so that they incorporate you into the methodology that they're using in order to service their customers is a big thing. And so what we've seen over the last 3 months is that large companies, because they can't hire quick, they can't put people in place. And marketing operations folks, they're in huge demand. Anybody who is in that business is just in a great business right now. But literally, they're going to their agency partners or finding agency partners, both themselves and also through us, because we recommend our partners out. But they're going to them and saying, I need for you to audit my stack. I need for you to help me document what I'm doing. I need to understand how data is flowing because the person who did it is gone. Or, there's an initiative right now to move towards digital transformation. And you've got to know where you are today in order to start making the plans for where you go tomorrow. So, large organizations, both in the States and then internationally, are starting to use CabinetM in a large way to do that. And so, we are going to, we're going to grow the platform technically. Mm-hmm. We're going to add AI and machine learning because we have a ton of data that we've collected in the back end of CabinetM. There have been over 850 stacks that have been built there. Yeah, so we can manually see what are people using? What are they using alongside one another? We anonymize and aggregate that data, but our data set is grown enough that we can actually layer that technology on and start becoming a recommendation engine, right? So that's one dimension. The ability to dive deeper into how you're looking at your data is really important. And so we're doing some work around that as well. And quite serendipitously, every partner I onboard asks about that. So we know we're sort of moving in the right direction there. And then, we're really looking at different channels, both here and abroad, to, bring CabinetM to companies. 2-3 years ago, international, companies were lagging behind the US. That's not the case anymore. We have a Japanese reseller named Underworks. They're a digital agency, but they're amazing in the way they think about what they can do for their customer and the cues they've heard both from their customers and other places. So we may sell through them into a channel in addition to selling just to end users, through them. So, we think the future's bright. We certainly hope so. You never know what's behind door number C. We've seen door number A, door number B. What's behind door number C? We hope it's good things for us.
I hope that is good things for you as well. Thank you so much for today. Any last bits of advice for Lioness readers? Yeah,
so if you're starting a company, it takes two things. It takes a lot of things, but two things someone recently shared, during COVID is it takes patience. Okay. Yeah. That, but it really takes perseverance. You've got to endure a lot to get to where you're going. And in order to do that, you want to persevere, and it takes time. And unfortunately, you just don't know how much time, and you need to move quick. So if something isn't working, test it, try it, throw it out. Test it, try it, throw it out. I mean, we have done more marketing experiments than I can ever tell you. Things that we truly believed would work, and you just have to know when to say, this isn't working. A lot of people spend 6 months, a year in it. Don't do that. Test it, try it, test the next thing. And don't just test and try one thing. Get ready to do the next thing. If you don't have to use that next thing, great. So that's what I'd say. And women, just keep supporting women. Keep holding each other up. We need each other.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And this is Bobby Carlton. I've been talking with Sheryl Schultz. She is one of the co-founders of CabinetM.